Hello, Jazz.
Hello, Doug.
Just doing reminders. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Sam. Hey, Tease.
So I'm trying a different location here as an experiment.
Seems to be working.
It's more evident when the dogs and my daughter are romping around. It's a different view of the mess of the house. I don't know if you know Sarah Survey, but she may join us today. She said that she'd like to join at one point, but hasn't been able to yet. And today she's at the beach. So, yeah, see, that's what I meant.
So I gather you don't have dog doors where the dogs can just come and go as they please.
No. Yeah. I don't own this place yet. Once I own this place, we can do a bunch of stuff like that. If I actually manage to do that.
Very excited. My daughter gave me earbuds, wireless Bluetooth earbuds for Father's Day. Very high tech for me.
So what's cool about them? I don't use earbuds.
I haven't used them before, so I don't know, other than the fact that they're wireless, I guess. At least that's the concept.
I do have a set of Bose wireless headphones.
Oh, I have Bose wired. That's what I use. Hey, Gertrude.
Hi. I took the liberty of making a few edits to your Eng1 doc, just FYI. Eardrop. That was yesterday. Gesundheit. So, Doug, FYI, we had Kayla lead us yesterday in a relatively benign topic of racism.
I know I had planned on being there, but didn't realize that my wife had booked me for the day. So I'm looking forward to the recording.
I think I got it up late last night.
How was it? How was it?
It was interesting to hear a few of us tell individual stories. I was surprised that each of the stories were not more emotionally charged. But then we didn't actually have Black lives directly in attendance. So there were stories from a lot of different other experiences, including mine. And just Winder and Peace Winder.
Yeah, I over my life I've had relatively few confrontations with that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about things that we observed. We mostly talked about things that directly happened.
You mean of which you were on the receiving end, I assume, or no?
Well, one was free to talk about both, but most of it was how we were on the receiving end.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant.
And I did use the word we, sorry. Each of us.
Greetings from Roy's. Just came in.
Gertrude, you're breaking up. I'm not sure why. Did anybody else experience Gertrude is broken up or no?
Yes, the network is breaking up, but I got also a message earlier that all information goes to a server in Europe now. So they've blocked China more or less. So maybe we have a bad connection now.
So meaning we're blocked from using Chinese servers, or Anything getting out of China or anything going into China?
That is my interpretation, but I only got a message that from one Zoom meeting that it would be going through European servers. That's what I knew.
Wow.
And then yesterday there was notice that there was a blockage in so extra noise on my voice. I don't know if it's today, but yesterday.
Sorry, I didn't get all of that. Is that something that's local to you, or is that something that's global?
What do you mean? I got only the message from Zoom, so I don't know if you got that same message. So that's all.
I didn't receive anything like that, so I'm assuming it doesn't affect North America.
I'm going to check my email now.
I just checked the Dutch, the COVID numbers, so I'm happy now. It's relatively low, but my town got one more case, so I'm not safe yet.
You know, the U.S. has become Typhoid Mary for the world. We've got hotspots springing up everywhere.
Well, hotspots is different here. I mean, hotspots is very known now, the refrigerated areas of slaughterhouses, like now in Germany, or they closed the flats, so the people are now protesting, throwing stones at the police in Göttingen. So Germany finding cases, and the slaughterhouse, which is somewhere else in Gütersloh, more than 1,000 cases were found. But we were earlier also finding cases around slaughterhouses, and in the slipstream in Germany, they found the wage differences between workers from East Europe and the local workers, and monthly pay for the workers there. Yeah, Gertrud can try to speak.
No, I I try to. Is it better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, great. Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I don't see anything on my end from Zoom about server-related stuff. So
No, that was yesterday. I don't see it today, but yesterday I saw that message on entry.
Where did you get the message? Or where
It's
did
always in
you
the
see
page,
it?
when I open Zoom. So, but
Okay.
it was only one time I saw it, so I was surprised. That's why I saw it.
Okay. Sometimes I'm very like wondering because there's so many different information coming and you never know if they are true from whom, whatever that means. So there are a lot of pranksters or whatever somewhere. Are you all looking for Zoom now, or I'm not sure. I see everybody like fixed on the screen.
yeah, I'm just curious. But
That's just Linda.
Sometimes I look at other pages, yes, and then I don't see you, so, unless a discussion starts. But because of the discussion yesterday, I found other thoughts in my head that I share. Because Jaswinder always speaks about coming with different societies, ideas. So, and I want to know how the solution pattern would be if you would propose it.
I don't know whether you folks saw any news or reporting on this big rally Trump held here yesterday.
Yeah, but only things that he didn't say or the way he spoke things. So.
Yeah, it was this huge fail. He ended up with maybe 6,000 people. They had predicted 1 million people, $1 million. It's like what? It's like a presidential version of that movie. $1 million. But apparently, I don't know whether it's urban legend or true or not, but it gives me huge delight thinking about it. But these teenage K-pop fans, Korean pop music fans, all connected with each other and thought it would be a cool prank to sign up for tickets, to request tickets. So they think that's where the 1 million number might have come from. They had no intention of ever going. And so when Trump walks out on stage, instead of seeing an arena with 19,000 people and overflow crowds outside, and they had this huge outside stage set up for the overflow crowds to get a consolation appearance by the emperor in chief. And he walks out, and there's 6,000 people and a ton of empty blue seats. And in his own words, it was extremely low energy. And I was watching MSNBC report on this morning, and there were 4 beaming faces, just in sheer glee at the fail of this thing. it was really quite something. Yeah. So I think maybe Trump is getting blocked.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah. And it even came through the German news.
Oh, it did. That's what I was curious about.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they had it in the normal news. I mean, like yep.
So I presume he wore a mask as advised.
Oh no.
Yep.
Neither he nor
They
the 6,000 people in
about
attendance.
Juneteenth and what happened there and why it was changed to 20th and and then the story about the youngsters and the grandmother.
I think we lost Gertrude.
And the people think they're protected by God against COVID going there because, and the report reporters say they are more hardened than ever, but fewer. So it's more the hardcore
Yeah.
people really there.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of energy or enthusiasm, which is a good sign, I guess.
Better now?
A little bit. You're breaking up a bit. We can hear
I
the
hear
beginning.
you loud and clear.
Yeah. I think the internet is just overloaded. This is the new normal. So who has a block to put on the table? Besides Gertrude's block around the internet.
Yeah, and you better come up with one, otherwise Doug and I will go again.
I was wondering if we could do one with Sam, since we're here together.
Sorry, I was not immediately available because I was cleaning up a little Zoom mess. So I heard the invitation. I'm willing if that's the last resort, but you know, along the way, Doug might get dragged in, so be careful.
That's allowed. So Sam, you want to pick up with where we left off, or do you have a new one?
I have a new one, but can you give me like 2 minutes? I still have to spray this little chair here that got a little bit soiled. So I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Sure.
A short check. Can you now hear me? Okay,
Yes.
I hope that stays. Okay, so
Sam said he'll be back in a couple of minutes.
yeah, and what did you decide?
He's got one for us.
He's got one for us. For you
He
mean? Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about it. By the way, Doug, we have to set up a date because of your numbers. You haven't gotten them yet.
Oh,
I
we do.
was cleaning up, and then I said, "Oh, we haven't talked about it." So I have the sheet and everything.
Okay. Terrific. What do you look like after this?
Hmm?
Are you available after this?
Mm-mm,
No?
not today. No, no.
Okay.
I have another 2 hours, 19 to 21. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for your indulgence. I have now cleaned up a little mess. So I have, it is a block. It's also a story. And if you'd like to hear it, I could go.
The
Okay.
the talking stick is yours.
As you are pretty well aware, BLM is a big topic these days. So I was talking to, I guess I should go ahead and name her. No, I'll just keep it my ex-girlfriend and say she, as some of you are aware, was treated badly by her parents, not her parents, her father, and has had some challenges in her life since then. So I was speaking with her yesterday after she was back from work, at her house, talking about all these atrocities being committed in this out of control police force against Black people. And she understands that here. But here, she's still very resentful that there's still a lot of abuse against women trafficking, against children. And none of that resulted in this mass uprising and protest. And it turns out that, women are very much abused by police as well. Witness this law in Kansas where, they actually had to pass a law saying the police couldn't actually have sex with people they were arresting, So that's not something that's local just to Kansas. It's a lot of places. So she's having trouble, really getting behind it because she's saying, geez, nobody came to women's support. Women were the last people, even after Blacks, to get the vote here in the United States. They're still abused by the police system. And she believes, probably rightly so, in my opinion, that if we addressed that, then many racial issues would actually be tempered in the entire process. So that kept us up for like 2.5, 3 hours last night. That caused me to be late for an earlier appointment this morning, so that caused me to flake. So anyway, I just wanted to represent that she had this position, which I can't really argue with, and yet there's still this notion that every minority that has been persecuted and oppressed looks at Black Lives Movement and say, why didn't that happen for us? And that's the issue, and especially for women because it's so pervasive against women, and yet it still didn't happen for women. So I think that's the summary. That's a high-level overall summary of it, which got her all worked up.
And what about you?
I
You're
agree.
just
I agree.
telling what she said. Yeah.
I think that she has a very fair point. And it's just been happening so long and so pervasive that it doesn't get the blip in the signal that we are able to get with Black Lives. I guess, when this happens against women, there aren't a lot of people around videotaping, this video recording this stuff. I suspect that if it had, it would have gotten a lot more visibility. But, since the stuff against Blacks is happening out in the open, yes, it's actually being recorded and it's actually being shared. And one of the things she did observe was many black people are on police departments. And she's shocked at how those black police are actually going along with a lot of this police oppression. I can't argue with that either. It has to go without, it has to be noted that one of the other three police in the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd killing was Asian. Again, I'm personally disappointed that an agent stood by and let that happen. And I am aware that there are, women in the police force that try to stop it, and were fired for trying to stop that kind of abuse. Anyway, so that's what got her all upset. And I listened, I support, I think she has a valid point. At the same time, wherever there's an opening to push back against police brutality, I think we have to take that opening. And right now, it's BLM. Unfortunately, it's not like anybody ever came up and said women lives matter. That didn't happen. I mean, it happened in kind of a lesser visible, sadly, case. All right, I think I'm done with the overview.
So at the risk of being pokey, I'm not sure that the real question is less about is that the real challenge is more about the conduct, truth, and reality of the present moment in these domains as ongoing offenses against sense and against humanity and values. And that the preoccupation, if you look at what's going on, there's a huge focus and preoccupation on what's in the rearview mirror. The people pulling down the statuary, right? And so they were, tearing through the country, coast to coast, tearing down statues of Confederate figures who were basically seditionists at the time and traitors to the United States. And then some folks pulled down a statue of George Washington, who's, quote, the father of the country, because he was a slave owner. And some other folks pulled down a statue of the guy who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance, I think. And so, because they were all slave owners. And the truth of the matter is that the United States as a country was founded by a group of white, fat, wealthy slave owners who really had a problem with paying taxes to England. It was a Trump tax revolt of its era that happened to be done under cover of these extremely lofty words like the Constitution. But when the Constitution was written, blacks were not human, and women, I believe, were only credited with being 2/3 human or something. They were still chattel property too. So I just don't know that the preoccupation with the past or who's getting attention for past stuff, apropos your ex's, issue about what about women, right? In the face of Black Lives Matter.
It's not in the past.
Well, that's my point, that both of these things are present. Like, this is living stuff. And it's not an issue about looking back. It's an issue about in the present. And she not only is she right, but it's even more sort of insipidly entrenched. The patriarchal discrimination and abuse of women is even more entrenched and in certain respects more horrific than the contemporary trials and tribulations of being black and male in the United States, not knowing whether you're going to be able to go home, at the end of the day safely, which is just as horrific. It's not a competition. It all should be stopped, and it all should be of consciousness and present and a living awareness, leveling up of awareness. And I think on a certain level that's happening. Like, there are a lot of people out demonstrating every day, 7 days a week, and have been for now a month. And it doesn't look like it's going to stop. Yeah, Tees.
Just, well, more for fun maybe, but the Dutch revolt against the taxation of the new ruler appointed by the Spanish king over these lands, imposing a tax of, say, 10%, started the revolt that led to our independence and becoming a state as the Netherlands eventually, in the end. So it was in 1569. I know the skirmishes started in 1568. It ended in 1648, but 1569, I just checked, and there was a tax revolt starting an uprising eventually. And also, of course, you had religious persecution and so on. So there were more reasons. But,
so 80 years.
yeah, that's, of course, there were not different type, and I think allegiances changing. So it's so we stumbled into independence more or less. It was not skirmishes more or less, and of course towns were with around circles, so the armies were not as effective as they can be now. There were no cannons at that time, so they couldn't. If you wanted to have a town, you had to starve it. So when the people don't like to starve, so okay, come in.
Yes, Sam.
So I broke your story, sorry, because it was a no different story that you went in a different direction afterwards. But the independence movement really is about taxation. Starting, one of the points.
So, Tees, just FYI, whenever you speak, there seems to be a tapping again. This happened yesterday, and I think it's still there today.
Yeah, it might be there. Is it now here? Do you hear it now? Or not?
That was much better.
Okay, then it's a movement of my computer, which is on my leg. And if I move my leg, there is a sound that comes from my computer. It's a mechanical thing. Now I keep it still with my hand, so now it doesn't occur. Now I know what it is.
And Doug, from what I know about having this conversation with my ex-girlfriend, you might want to reconsider this notion of, but the real question, quote unquote, is what to do in the present. I think that's a very triggering question for those who have been through a lot of pain and a lot of abuse and who feel that they've not been heard. And for you or someone or me to come by and say, well, put the past in the past, the real question is, quote unquote, that will be dismissive to her. And I do know this because I've kind of done that in the past. So that's my reaction to whether or not it's in the present. I think to acknowledge that there is a past that is painful and that we're hearing the victims of such pain and abuse, and to then eventually work to, okay, so what are we going to do today? I think that's probably a worthwhile approach. But to say, upon quick hearing of something, the real question is what to do in the present, is going to be very triggering, at least to my ex-girlfriend. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it as in dismissal of bearing witness. I think the bearing witness part is also, of equal importance. But I just get this feeling that the bearing witness without the reconciliation process, without action, leaves the status quo very much the status quo, if that makes sense.
No, I agree with you, but these are big issues which often cannot be addressed in a single conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think, to me, it feels like more space to hear would be more healing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I did have this conversation with her late last night, and she may or may not actually show up today. She's afraid that she won't be heard, which is why I'm actually telling you that.
With whom?
What?
With whom?
You mean this conversation I'm relating? Yeah, it's my ex-girlfriend.
No, you said she might show up. You mean your...
In this session, I told her that this is an opportunity to state her position.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're talking about the same
Yes.
Yeah.
woman.
She also
Yeah.
does work today, so she's saying, she might not be able to get up in time. I told her if she even got here before 10, she would have an audience. But like I say,
Yeah.
she may not believe that she has an audience, although I tried to reassure her.
Sam, for me, you're pretty faint. I hear the others pretty well, but not you. I mean, I can listen, but I have to be very...
Is this better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Likely your volume is very
I'm
low,
trying a
Sam.
different machine. This is a machine I've never tried before, so if it doesn't work, I'll change.
But maybe do you have an audio that can be... the switch go up? When I listen to you, I think I totally agree with the subject and here listening to what she had to say, and I think the whole thing started with that video. So there is, I think people have to feel it and to really experience it to say, now it's enough. So I think this really got so many people touched. And they know now something has to change. Before they knew it in their head somehow. But now it's kind of, that can't be normal.
Not
like
just one video, it's multiple videos.
Yeah, and Brooks and whoever. And so I think this being touched here in the heart by what happened, and then going out and and doing whatever they do, this is correlated. And I think for so many thousands of years, it was normal to treat women differently than men.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that is upsetting.
so I think it's just the personal view of, or I know abuse. I know so many who do. But you were trained not to speak up. You were trained not to put it in the open because nobody believed and whatever. So I think that's kind of a next step, because it somehow after slavery, people knew it was not right somehow. And I think now the time has come to really, and that atrocious way of doing policing and stuff like that. And actually, Black transgender women are worst off.
It's the divide and conquer part of that I think is what's getting to me. Oh, Gertrude, you broke up.
So
I'm sorry.
I think
Sorry.
other
We lost the last
Asian,
thing you were saying.
natives, whoever come along. And what I thought was really touching, that the native community said, we go with you. We don't fight for ourselves, but at the moment, we're fighting for and saying Black Lives Matter too, not because our problems don't count, but because we say now it's a righteous cause and we go out there. And I think that's, so women to go out with Black Lives Matter doesn't mean they don't get abused. But now it's the time to do this and then go further from there. That's what I think.
No, I mean, fundamentally, I agree with you. I don't know if my audio is any better right now. But I think that there are, in a sense, the tribe elders who are able to see the bigger picture. I'm not yet aware that there's a national organization of women that has similar elders. In fact, I believe that the National Organization of Women leader herself has been in a scandal of sorts. So it's the question of whether women feel like they're sisters in this, or whether, again, someone has to say, hey, here's the break in the dam regarding police brutality. Let's punch there first, and then let's solve the bigger picture. But that hole right there deserves all of us, because it's getting the visibility. And it does feel unfair for people who have been abused for years or decades or centuries to not get the same visibility. But intellectually, I get it. It's just emotionally hard for some of those, especially. Let me not say those. I'm saying for my ex-girlfriend to actually get it. Okay, she gets it here, but there's still a lot of unheard pain that she's addressing, and she feels like the sisterhood of women have, over the centuries, probably even more victims, and that's not getting the same set of ears over.
But isn't there a problem with a competition of victims?
Yes.
That's the part of this that just is.
And it doesn't actually address a specific individual who's speaking about the pain.
No, I get that. I get that the individual, the individual testaments, right, is a dimension of all of this. But there's sort of a larger meta question about how do you catalyze an awakening across the board that recognizes the wrong in all of these things.
But she's not disagreeing with BLM.
No, I understand that. I understand that. The individual, the healing individual to individual is an individual thing. It's an individual process. I've never met anybody where that is not personal. and I work with a lot of people one-on-one on that basis to heal them. But I'm also sort of, there are 8 billion of us, and maybe we can figure out a way of catalyzing a leveling up and an awakening to this stuff on a greater scale at a faster rate. And that's not in lieu of or in replacement of the individual, tending to the individuals amongst us who are engaged in or looking for healing. They're two completely different domains. But I don't know how to do the individual healing other than one by one. And I teach a workshop where we do sort of a group on one. You know, we'll have 65 people focusing on one person in support of, to help them with their healing processes as witness. So you can always do better with more people helping an individual. And I think in indigenous populations and what used to be villages, you know, where everybody supported each other, you know, that was a known, sensed, felt thing. It was part of sort of the moral fabric of a community. That's like, seems to be gone or majorly suppressed and diminished.
Yeah, I think the difficulty here is she's not asking anyone to do anything differently. She's just asking for herself to be heard, while at the same time recognizing that BLM is an opportunity to affect change.
I like that. Kayla, I'm sorry I missed yesterday. I got co-opted by the boss. That's my wife. But I will watch it back on playback.
No problem. We miss you.
Yeah, I wanted to be there. But some powers are, you know, that force is irresistible. We've been together over 30 years, and I learned that.
We did have a new participant come. I think Stacy invited a fellow named Dan. So we had a new gentleman join us yesterday. He's
Oh,
actually
cool. He's actually what?
a journalist.
My friend Sky joined us too. She's like me. She's really quiet and she likes to listen. Well, at first. She's also a dancer, and she works for a skateboarding company. You know, so she works for a pro skater and does their operations, I think. But she's also really heavy into volunteering. She's a single mom, and I often see pictures of her with her daughter, you know, at the food pantry, just helping in any way, shape, or form in the community. So she's a lovely, lovely person. I hope she joins more.
Tees, have you had sort of domestic Black Lives Matter style demonstrations at all in your country, or is your country?
Yes, I shared without explaining something about Dutch hero, which is I remember only his back name is Koen. I put it in the chat later, and he present day Indonesia is actually part of his job. So, and it included genocide on some islands to secure how you call it? Monopoly rights on spices from St. Island. So 15,000 people have been killed. So he had informed the leadership, but they didn't take it seriously enough. And afterwards, they were, of course, appalled. So and then now they say, okay, we can stay appalled year after year. And so if you say, okay, it takes a longer time, it takes a repetition. So if you apologize for past wrongs, you have to do it again and again and again and again. We say, okay, the story, we have this story in the 19th century already. You have the same discussion again about these heroes. But in the 19th century, the hero was actually promoted by the leadership. So they had a statue. The statue is in Hoorn, and earlier there was a protest with a statue. So there's a story next to the statue, but now again, and then of course rioting goes on top of it. So people, okay, they know there's a demonstration, so youngsters come to make a riot extra on top of it. So there's much movement. Also, young people after independence of Suriname, many people could opt for Dutch nationality. So and then they came to the Netherlands. So the talk about slavery in the high schools has to be strengthened. So the story, and now today, there's a special program that I like to listen to. It's about history. So we transported, say, 600,000 Africans as slaves from Africa to the New World. So as a country, say, so then who are the slave trades, and then where is the money gone, etc. So the whole story has to be repeated again and again. And the healing process, that's your thing. So that's of course the problem, because the healing process does. But one woman from the nobility started to do research, and she was able, because one of her ancestors possessed land in Suriname where slaves have been. And they found people, descendants from the slaves living in the Netherlands. So she connected with one of the descendants of slaves, which is very nice woman. So they're talking with each other. There was a podcast. I heard it today again. It's the third story of that research. So they are both doing research, the nobility, more or less, and the person that descendants from the slaves. So the books will come and so on. But it needs a continuously thing, because the healing process, because our young people are being born, they need to learn the story. They have to have the healing process over and over again. And the whole society has to have the healing process. Because, because yesterday was very nice to see, but we had a talk with Kayla, and then but the other side, I said to some in the chat, I'm the white privileged man, so I don't say, okay, what are all the goodies that come to my side? I can also say, okay, I'm part of a minority language group and so on, so we can play all the victims. But okay, I can also say, okay, we're on the good side, getting gaining from it. So that was not the subject for yesterday, but it's part of the story, of course. That's enough now. But enough protests. Protests continuously. Also protest in Amsterdam, people not having 1.5 meter distance. So I checked today, so not so many extra COVID cases. There's also, so there's different. So the disease COVID comes in between, of course, also. So there's much to discuss about. But I want to stop now.
isn't the reconciliation piece sort of like the process that South Africa engaged in? Isn't the collective societal reconciliation piece critical? You know, the formal process. Yeah, Ties.
There was a war from the English with the local settlers, Dutch speaking. So they invented concentration camps in South Africa, putting the Dutch speaking people in concentration camps. So yeah, so reconciliation, always necessary. So it's playing the victim, you see? It's very easy to do. Everybody can play the victim. So yeah, reconciliation, hope it has to be done. It's a good idea.
Yeah. It's the shoe that I'm not sure gets its proper expression energization, because definitionally it's the institutional dimension of the culture that has to go through that process. I've taught this workshop in Israel a bunch of years, and you know, Israel is a country dedicated to remembrance of an atrocity in certain respects. I mean, it's more than that, obviously, but a huge part of the national gestalt is the thrust of the ultra-Orthodox is actually replacement of those lost. That's why they have, 13 children families, is trying to make up for the body count of the Holocaust. But in workshops, it's not unusual to find, not just survivors of the Holocaust, but first generation survivors, second generation survivors, third generation survivors. And they're carrying the torch of the Holocaust as predominantly in their present lived gestalt as a survivor, as the survivors did. In certain respects, more. Because the survivors of the Holocaust that I've known generally were always focused on joy of living. They were not focused on what had happened. They couldn't escape what happened. The imprint was forever, but in their lives. But their focus was on the life they have in the present and now, and what they were making of it. And they always lived life very fully. All the ones that I met. So there's something about how we as a species relate to trauma, relate to hurt. That's clearly not from the neck up. That stuff is lizard brain and heart and centered in a different frame of being. Yatis.
Yeah, now again, South Africa, they became independent, and the Dutch descendants had a secret group, and they took power in South Africa and installed the apartheid. So they took revenge on the English, but actually the victims became the black people, the locals there.
So it's playing it forward.
No reconciliation and not self-reflection, but to staying in power, which is called white supremacist, or how you call it. So they were able to organize, to know which position to hold, to take, then to take power democratically. So more or less, I'm not sure because I wasn't there. So, but they took power. So the Dutch people, more or less, I see it in the names that they took over after but the locals, of course, in South Africa.
Germany even did worse in Namibia with the Hereros. And they are almost at an apology. But if they acknowledge it and apologize, then there is some righteous reason to give reparations. And I think that's what they don't want to do. But I can hardly read what happened, how they treated them. I mean, it was more than 100,000 who got really slaughtered. And some of them even sent to an hospital that's still existing for research. So, yeah.
It starts again with the mindset, of course, not to see others as humans, but in the European sense, Germany was late to be part of the colonization movement, so they had to pick up. That's what they did, and also they caused 2 world wars within Europe because they didn't war. And I just checked yesterday. 1871, Germany became one country, so it was divided. So the Dutch were able to make a colonial empire. So more or less, it's that bad habit of gaining access to other parts of the world and not being good at knowing the local people. So, and then there are so many stories about colonialism that I could tell, so many aspects, but it's too much to say. But of course, the bad things happen, and then the reconciliation is the part, and then must it be money? And probably it must. I think also in Namibia, many white farmers are still there, so the land is still owned, not by the Herero, not so much. I mean, I saw a video that I thought, hey, it doesn't fit, more or less. I don't see the Herero really having the possession of the land in Namibia.
We started with your ex-girlfriend's question or the real story behind it. So, Sam, I'm asking myself, what is it that could come out of this conversation today? What is it that is your intention to bring it up?
I don't have an expectation of resolution. I just have a voice that I thought wanted to be heard that hasn't really been, she hasn't felt that she has been heard. And I'm guessing that she's not the only one.
Mm.
See, part of it also is a difficulty because she knows in the moment that support for Black Lives Matter is the right action today. So even thinking that, oh, how come women haven't been heard, and detracting a little bit of energy from BLM introduces even just a little bit of guilt there, which I think shouldn't be there, in my opinion. So there's the action, which she agrees with, and yet there's the pain, which she feels has not yet been heard or acknowledged. And so that's the stress inside her.
And I think it gets even more complicated because also Black men or white men rape or abuse Black women. Or so, I mean, it's not, if we say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden all Black women are free.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So, and maybe even in a culture that was brought by the whomever, to that there is this inferiority of women in specific cultures. So, and even in ours. So I think the subject is a lot more layered and complicated than just that. But we could say human life matters or human lives matter, but then it is so broad that you say, yeah, of course, da 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 da, and then nothing changes. But this specific, it reminds me, like in marketing, you have this like a targeted audience or a specific thing that you start with, and then you can broaden from there. So it's a little bit like that. That's what I think. And when my sister first brought it up, the subject of abuse, I was hesitant because I didn't remember for myself. So I was hesitant to acknowledge it and to really listen to her. And when I realized it, then I had to call her up and apologize, because I said I couldn't listen because it was so numbed for me that and somehow I get that many mothers are numbed because of that, and then they don't see their daughters. I could really feel it, like how could women see it and not react? And I think there is a numbness also translated from generation to generation. So I understand what she said. I mean, it's really.
So I do resonate with what you say. I think my ex-girlfriend would resonate with what you say, because more than anything, she wants to be acknowledged and heard by other women. She herself has given up on men and acknowledging it. She's tried so many times, she's given up on that.
Yeah. My sister-in-law is working on a film about amnesia and abuse and rape. And she wants to interview me because so often it is said, but if that was really happening, why didn't they come earlier? Or why, you know, like, so you really forget it. You really forget it. I mean, not everybody, but but I know how it feels and how it's really like pushed aside, because otherwise you couldn't survive in this. I mean, if it's your father, I mean, you still love that guy, and it's still you still want to be part of the family. It's, you cannot just, and so there's a part that says, okay, that comes in the darkest cellar ever. And then something happens and it pops up and you think, why couldn't I remember? And even, I mean, when it happened, my father said, you must not tell anybody, because otherwise it's you're guilty of the family being ripped apart. And I even forgot, I told my sister right away when I found it out. And just a few days ago, she told me, yeah, and he said, then the family will, what do you call, when you die out of hunger. So when, yeah, verhungern in German. It's, and I forgot that immediately. So I was saying, okay, then the family gets ripped apart and this is your fault. But actually he said, our family will die of hunger if you say anything. And so I forgot it, the whole thing. And then I told my sister right away when it came up, and I forgot it for years that he went that far. So it's really amazing how you adapt to what is necessary to survive in those circumstances. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to be guilty of that. I even lost a job, and I saved 200 other jobs. So it didn't even dawn on me to protect my own. It was just not in my. So the only one who got fired was me out of that. And the 200, the other people, I could really show them that it was not the right thing to do and that they didn't save money for it. But they had rearranged it so they didn't have to keep me as a boss of that. So yeah, and it's still affecting life, but you don't know till you know. So and I have a third sister, and I'm very sure that the same happened to her, since we too went to the boarding school. So there was nobody there to protect her in any way. And she is cycling, so for many years now. But she denies it. She says, no, that never happened. So.
What was that word you used? Psyching? I don't understand that
Cycling.
word.
Bipolar.
Oh.
You know, that whole silence meme, there was a lot of testimony over the years in various attempts to get Jeffrey Epstein. He was this famous, trafficker,
Yeah.
abuser, and in a lot of the testimony of a lot of these young girls, you know, they described the moment of confrontation with what was happening and just being completely at a loss in that moment in how to deal or respond. They were in his territory, in a closed room, with nobody, with no recourse, with no nothing. And they all share the same experience of that moment, of just being, you know, at a loss and feeling no place to go, no power, no alternatives, no, you know, and completely taking on sort of responsibility for it after, in terms of not telling anybody. That you know, what you described your father is doing, in terms of, if you tell, you destroy the whole family. It's on your shoulders. You know, and they all seem to carry that same sort of who to tell, how to tell, you know, just being at such a profound loss of self and such a profound depth of injury and at such a profound place of isolation. It's really striking, the powerlessness in that, in those shares. And on an experiential level, there's no human experiential difference between that trauma and the trauma George felt with that cop's knee on his neck. He couldn't move, he couldn't do anything, all he could do was die. And it's that powerlessness, helplessness, hopelessness. And connecting to that is central to the abuser, is central to the cultural frame of owning and accepting responsibility for causing that level of hurt. Being able to hear that and understand it and feel into and imagine into it. Yes, Sam.
What I can't even remotely begin to understand is the role of the woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, what is her name? That recruited these young girls.
The procurer, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no way of comprehending how she lives with herself doing this sort of thing. That's as close to unconscionable as anything I've ever seen.
Yeah. I think when I got the role of women in racism, in, you know, in treating slaves and things like that, I think women are not the better part of humanity per se. Not that they are oppressed more than men. That's sure, but I don't think that they have more. Yeah, what I read and heard about several women in specific circumstances didn't make me feel better. So there must be something like a certain part of humanity just pushed away for money, for power, for, I don't know, for being close to the one in power so I can participate. And there was one, I cannot, but there was one sentence that really stuck with me that Mr. Trump said one day when he was accused of assaulting a woman. He said she wasn't pretty enough to have his attention. So it's double dehumanizing. So she was not even pretty enough to be raped. So. Which is not the cause for rape, to be pretty. That's not the point. It's overpowering. It's
Like what you said, Gertrude, about the layers there when it comes to the issue around women, and specifically what you said about President Trump and what he said. That struck me too. I was having this conversation with Sam, as a matter of fact, about how there's just so much suppression, so much expectation, so much brainwashing women have to go through. I mean, you know, my ex-boyfriend said I wasn't skinny enough or pretty enough because I wasn't a size 0 and I didn't have Botox and fake breasts. I mean, and there are a lot of people, men and women included, who still believe that. And it's this glorification of society thinking that women should have these model type bodies after giving birth. You know, we still have to uphold ourselves of just looking like we're 20 years old. Now, I don't know when that happened, you know, but I feel like with all of this crap out there, you know, plastic surgery, Botox fillers, I mean, more and more people are buying into that, men and women. And along with the Black Lives Matter, you know, this is an opportunity. People are listening. There are more protests. You know, it's continuous in the news. It's sad and tiresome. But again, I was talking to a friend about this, and with yesterday's Talanoa dialogue, I was like, I would like to have a Talanoa about the issues on women. You know, I would like to hear from victims. I would like to hear from people in the industry that promote that specific look that's on big screen and is entertainment for all to see. You know,
Barbie.
I would like to hear from men. You know, it just, it's incredible to me. And the fact that we have all of these deep layers of hurt, and that enough is overwhelming and suppressing for us to even speak on it. I mean, heck, I couldn't even tell my ex-boyfriend, like, why I asked him, why are you with me then? You know I'm not a size 2. You know I like myself, you know, enough to work on my confidence. You know I work hard on that, and I don't believe, why are you with me? You know, and a lot of my own therapists said, well, why shouldn't he be with you? And that wasn't so much of the question of, it was more like, why do you value that? You know, it just blew my mind. And then it blew my mind that I was with him in the first place. You know?
Yeah, and you're not anymore.
Yeah, thank God. But it's just those, I have this conversation all the time, and you know, it's, I can't beat this dead horse enough.
Here's something you said actually, again, landed in my brain, which is that your sister-in-law is doing a film about amnesia and rape. And this is one thing that it took me a long time to understand, is that there is that short-term amnesia, which may be self-survival kind of a mechanism that I've observed. And it comes along with nightmares. It comes along with high anxiety attacks, certainly a lot of PTSD. So that combination is very, very difficult to get. Not only that, it's hidden behind some very, very strong walls that are also created for self-survival. So getting through the walls and then seeing the amnesia, the PTSD, the nightmares, it's understandable, sad, and very, very difficult.
I think it took me some 27 years. Really completely. I would have sworn he never did that. Good Catholic. Caring father. Good member of society. Actually, on his deathbed, I haven't talked because how he treated my sister when she came out with it. So I never talked to him till his deathbed. And then I was talking, and he was so scared. As a good Catholic, you think of hell. And so he was really, really scared. He couldn't talk anymore because of his Parkinson's, but he was like trembling of fear. So I had 2 days to say everything I had to say and then let go. And this was really remarkable to his reckoning in knowing he now has to face his God. Yeah, and I couldn't leave him at that. So after I had said what I had to say, I could see tears coming down. And so I told him that angels are waiting. And he calmed down, and it's really, for me, it was good to have that peace finally. And it doesn't mean that the stuff was still in my system. So even forgiving, even cleaning and closing, doing a closure on that relationship, you still have to deal with what's there. And yeah, so there are many layers as well. But I've never, ever seen anybody that scared. He knew exactly. I mean, he was a good Catholic, so. I would like to go to what Doug said earlier. It's like the reconciliation and the forgiving, and the work we do on Fridays is about getting what it is about, really getting to the bottom of it, but then not pondering on it, but like turning around and say, what did I gain out? Not as like, what do you say, payoff, but as a strength. What did I develop out of this? What was it that I could do out of this? Like staying healthy is a big thing out of it. It's one part. And Kayla, I think for you as well, what you've gone through to stay healthy is beyond all comprehension for some things that happened. And then to see, yeah, it's like overcoming big hurdles and getting stronger out of it. It's not good that it happened. That's not the point. And I prefer not to have gone through that. But somehow to look at, my God, what kind of strength did people gain out of what happened to them? And to go from there. And I think that's what you were referring to, I think, Doug. Yeah. And not to like stay in the swamp, to acknowledge it and get out of it.
Well, that's ultimately the choice, right? The decision, the decision moment after is, does the rest of the story I write from this point forward become the story of how I was run over by a truck, or I was raped, or I was assaulted, or I was abused or injured or whatever, and that is my story and my narrative for the rest of my days? Or do I write a new chapter with whatever I have left that's functioning? And I think human beings as beings have this ability to, they both have the power to choose in that moment, and they have the tendency, reflex, to get stuck in that moment. The truth of it, the at least in my belief system, the objective truth of it is that it is literally a decision point. Like, it can be as simple as deciding to not make something the story of my life that's happened to me in the rearview mirror, or not. Saying that doesn't mean that for most, they could even entertain the possibility of leaving the past behind, because it has so much center of gravity and pull, and the injury and the hurt runs so deep. And So, you know, that's the conundrum and the challenge, and the challenge and the, you know, how to serve. That's where I invoke that thing, Sam, about unconditional love, which is loving others in the way they want to be loved, as opposed to loving them in the way you want to love them. And sometimes loving somebody who is stuck in a narrative of something that happened to them is loving them as stuck in the moment of something that happened to them. And you take them as they come, and help and support as much as possible. And as a person who bears witness to that or loves somebody who's in that situation, they're not in control of my choice about whether I'm there or not, whether I'm involved with them or not, whether I choose to love them as and who they are, including what they are currently writing as their story. Like, I don't have control over their choice in that. I do have control over my choice in being with them. And if I'm with them, then I'm with them at 100% unconditionally. I'm not with them subject to them changing. You know, I'm not with Kayla subject to her becoming size 0 and looking like a Barbie, an exotic Barbie. Like, go find an exotic Barbie, you know. Los Angeles is full of them.
But I think a big point is, and that brings us back to what your girlfriend said, to be heard and to acknowledge what happened, not to put pink sauce over and say, oh, we're all loving people and I choose to, like, positive thinking, it can be a very dangerous thing to even put it more in the stuckness and even hurt and cause more pain or re-traumatize. I think to really go to the bottom and really being acknowledged, being heard, and then making that choice, not before. That is, for me, is key, not to just gloss over it.
Absolutely.
And for someone who's experienced so much trauma, as you mentioned, a lot of it is hidden below the conscious memory. So as you get to one layer, more bubbles up. And that's what's been happening, is that, you know, you go through one layer, non-understandable behavior happens, drama happens. And it takes a while for that to settle down to really say, wow, that's what this was about. And you go through another layer and it happens again.
Yeah, it's onions. With some tears with it.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying conversation, or even a small number of conversations. You know? It's the kind of stuff that seems to always, and what's worse is a lot of the drugs that she's prescribed repress those memories.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, a few days ago, I had so I was the recipient of a work with me, of our method. And it went down to focusing and to really body work. And I really could, like, tentacles. It was really there, and it felt like there was a shield here, and then to look in it, it came like an airbag. It was really like, and I couldn't see anything anymore. and it felt like a mushroom. like something that, and it still had tentacles here all over, blah. And then I just took it off, and then it really came down into the earth, and Mother Earth was taking it, and I could see the others again. And and then there was this one thing more, and I really had to take it off. And it felt as if it, I mean, I worked, the memory came back, so it was more like a mental thing. The emotional work, when I did the body therapy training and all that kind. And now it was almost physical, as if there was like like a mushroom poison that I was poisoned for many, many years, and really taking that out. And so it felt as if it was on many different layers. I worked on that and really removed all kinds of residuals. So maybe today I feel a lot freer to talk about it than before. And it really feels like my body is relieved. Like as if that was in kilos in my big belly and in, so at least 7 kilos. So, yeah. But it's work, and I think that's growing. So the layers, if you peel off, you can grow a little bit more, and then more and more, and have the shadows worked on. So, yeah. So you're definitely right that women need to be addressed. Women matters. I'm sure that this is right.
I think in social healing or national healing, I knew it was difficult, but I was really happy to see Marianne Williamson at least run. She has a lot of wisdom, and unfortunately, the world is not yet ready for her wisdom. I'm hoping that at some point we can.
I need to go soon, and I have to say it. So thank you very much for that conversation, everyone, including Jazz, who is really holding space for that. And Kayla, it's so great to see you again. And I almost missed you. I couldn't come Saturdays, and so it's it's really great to see you and to have that conversation together.
Yeah, Doug gave me the right link, I think, now. So we'll try it again on Friday. I miss your Friday sessions. I needed it.
Come back anytime.
Yeah. So crossing my fingers that the link will work.
I'll keep an eye out for IMs and other signals from you. So if you do get stuck, I'll be there. Yeah, I found her reach out for the link like, I don't know, days later.
Yeah. So Sam, thank you for bringing up that topic today. It's
Well, thanks for listening.
And let her know that she was heard in absentia.
I told her, it'd be more compelling if she were to speak it, but that even if she weren't, I would represent my understanding of this point of view.
yeah. Thanks, Doug, for always holding this specific space and others. Yeah. So,
More than welcome.
and we can set up a date for our conversation. Yeah.
Yep, I'll reach out offline.
Good.
Well, we're coming up to, by Gertrude, we're coming up to top of hour. And closing thoughts, closing shares, last minute blocks. They can be Legos.
Despite the tone of this conversation, things have actually been going quite well around here. So I just want to reflect that the life is full and it's not just morose moments, but I do think that interspersed here and there, those conversations are worthwhile. My daughter and I cooked together again last night. Some fried rice. We co-cooked, and that's been fun.
Well, it's really great that your ex wants to be heard, Sam. And anyways, I was happy for the session yesterday. Thank you again for the opportunity. I always love being here in these squares. But just to echo your point, life is good. And last night I packed for Utah. So I'm taking the kids and the dogs to Utah. And I can't wait for that. Just some fun, family fun in nature. Nature, in my belief, is probably the only reality that's here on this earth, the only real thing here. So, and thank you again for leading me back to Marianne Williamson. I have her on my web. I read her book when I was in my really early 20s, but I haven't read it since then. So I think I'm going to read it again.
Tease, any parting words?
No, just I was listening and touched me deeply. So silent now, so taking in and just feeling things we're spoken about.
Jazz? Nothing for you. One of the things that comes up for me is, Tease, you've shared, Gertrude has shared in the past, there are sort of unique national gestalt, national historic baggage that, depending upon your nationality and your country of origin and where you live, that you know about. That if I'm not Dutch and I don't live where you live, I have no basis to know, but you carry yours, I carry mine, and Jazz has his, and Sam has his, and Kayla has hers, and I wonder whether there isn't a warranted need for a circling up for people to share those almost, I imagine it sort of happened on a constellation, people that do constellation work have probably dabbled in this. But the idea of people coming expressly to represent their national shame or their national transgression against humanity, and to give voice to those and to share those and speak to them. Not for them, not against them, not about them, but to speak to them. That, I think, might be because in a peculiar way, the human experience behind each one of those is the same. The emotional impact, effect, and connectedness to it is the same. And so on a meta level, that's in common to everybody, even if the language spoken or the name of the perpetrator or the specific day and time and place and numbers are different. Just something that may make sense to do in a larger frame than just, folks that do a lot of this kind of channeling work in constellation practices, as a club, but do it in a more public and open and inviting way to everybody. Because I guarantee you the vast bulk of white Americans had no idea what the 19th of June meant until now. Not a clue. And I would not have, were it not for friends of mine who were Black musicians that I managed, who were artists back in my music business days, who brought it up on June 19th, and I was like, what's that? And they shared. So it seems to me this stuff should be taken out of the happenstantial awakening or awareness and brought into the intentional and the deliberate as sort of, shared common history that everybody should know about what we as a species have done to each other. As a collective inquiry, not siloed. So I'm gonna be stewing on that a little bit.
I thought I shared my last share, but I just wanted to mention in passing that as part of this reconciliation phase, or what do we do next, or even an aspect of barn raising, it looks like I'm taking next Saturday's session. And I'm going to kick around an idea which I have never ever voiced before. It's nascent, but I'm getting excited by it, and I hope to be able to share it with you next Saturday.
No hint?
The hint that I gave in yesterday's session was it was about additional voices.
Okay. Something. Well, folks, thank you. Thank you for being here. The end of another Sunday Unblocking, but thanks for co-creating it. This was rich and affecting, at least for me. And I really appreciate you all.
Thank you.